Good afternoon. My name is Cody Hand with the Speakers Collaborative, and you are with the Speakers Collaborative studio session for Tuesday, April 8th. I hope you all are having a fantastic quarter two. I'm excited about our next guest, Tarik Ali. Tarik is a friend of mine from a cohort that we did with Darren McKee, who I've talked about quite a bit. And I don't want to waste any more time, so I'm going to bring Tarik to the stage. Hello, sir.
This is so much fun. Like the music, the polish. I'm fired up, Cody. I'm on like 4 hours of sleep, and I'm still like this fired up to talk to you. I've been looking forward to it. So thanks for having me on, man.
4 hours of sleep. Where are you at right now?
Like mentally, energy wise, or like
I don't know mentally,
geographically.
like where are you sitting?
I'm sitting in my living room. It's not a very big space, but I can make it look bigger with different angles. You know those nights where you just can't sleep? Were up until like 4 in the morning. I don't know what happened. So
Always fun.
yeah, we're here. We're here. Thanks
Well,
so much, man. I'm
it
pumped.
is, it is great to meet you. Thanks for joining us. I was telling the group we met in Darren's class in January, and I'm excited to know what has happened in your life since then. But first, give us a little rundown of who Tarik is.
Tarik. Wow. I wear a bunch of different hats. Right now I'm a brother. I'm a fiance. We're getting married in December in Mexico. I'd never been to Mexico before, and I just went a couple weeks ago. We got a wedding down there. I'm a huge golfer. And I am an executive coach. And I love, yeah, Aaron, there you go. The Masters half zip. Happy Masters week. I'm an executive coach. I am Cody, I'm addicted to helping people overcome inner barriers. And I feel like I could trace that back to me being a kid. We can dive into how I got here and why I love it. But my mission right now is to help people in that way. And so having the chance to talk about that and get to know you a bit better is awesome for me.
That is fantastic. How did you get into coaching?
So the unofficial kind of way, look, when I was a kid on the playground, I, for whatever reason, would have kids coming up to me and like telling me what they're afraid of, what their secrets are. I don't know what it was, but people would kind of confide in me from a young age. I always felt this satisfaction in being that person for people. And early in my career, I was actually considering a pivot into an MBA. Decided not to go, but along that journey, I met with a couple mentors, and then I met with a coach. And the mentoring conversations, Cody, I would kind of sit down at a Starbucks and the person would say, "Hey, Tarik, what's going on?" And I'd say, "Hey, MBA, here's what I'm thinking." And for the next 27 minutes, they'd say, "Okay, hey, here's what I did. Here's the path that I walked. Here's what you should do. Here's some advice." And I'd gather these notes, but I never felt more clear kind of in my mind of like what mattered to me and what I should be considering when I'm thinking about doing an MBA. The third person I met, he was a coach, and I thought it would be the same type of thing, but I got to sit there and Cody, in those 45 minutes, I got more clarity than I had in like the weeks of me sitting trying to think through it. Like the way he asked me questions, the way he opened me up, I got to really sit in that feeling and understand like what was I actually trying to accomplish with this potential move. And it blew my mind, like the impact that had on me. And so I started thinking, hey, how do I do what this guy's doing? And I'll fast forward for you, but we can dive into any part of this. I decided to get certified 2, 3 years ago. I was like, you know what? Let me see if I enjoy this. And the dots all connected. And now I sit on Accenture's exec coaching roster around the world, which has given me a chance to coach senior leaders. And I work with 4 or 5 founders at a time as well. And it just fills my cup. It fills my cup to do this type of work.
That is awesome. That's really great. I hear a lot, and I know this from personal experience. You either coach how you were coached, or you coach because you weren't coached. So which one are you?
I think I coach because of how I was coached.
Okay.
Like when I think about that meeting with that person, where I go into it thinking it's going to be like every other mentor call where I'm like getting my notepad ready to try to capture every word that this person's saying, and the script completely flips. And I'm the one who's in the seat, and I've got the space to think through. And I told him things in that hour that I had never said out loud before. And it's funny now when I sit with a founder or sit with a senior leader, about 40% of the time, they'll say at some point, Tarik, what I just told you, I've either never said out loud before, or I haven't told my spouse. Like I haven't told my closest friend. Like I have never said this before. Please, are we under an NDA? Yes, we're under an NDA, right? And that's like how I was coached too. Like I was given that space to figure it out. So I'd say it's the former for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. That is great. I had a CEO one time. I was a brand new executive, and I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about getting a coach. Do you think that is acceptable?" And he said, "No, you don't need one. I'll do it." And then proceeded to have the worst 2-year experience of my life. And it launched into some side hustle sort of coaching after that. And it was really because I knew how not to do it. And I knew how not to do it in a way that wasn't productive still. And then I engaged with a man named Brandon Jenkins. I don't know if you know who Brandon is. And we went through a year process of really looking at what he calls a life blueprint. I'm actually looking at it over the screen right now. And through that process, I realized I don't know that he bills himself as a coach, but the way he was approaching the process and asking the questions, I felt very coached because, to your point, I was telling him things that I don't tell anybody. I was telling him things that I was so guarded with because it had been used against me in the past. And, my fears, my childhood issues, my religious issues. And I was just really opening it up and laying it out to him because he created a trust with me. And then I could tell after the first few conversations that his job wasn't to instruct me on how to go. It was to help me discover what my blueprint was. And I think that is where the best coaches come is they ask more questions than they answer. And two, they establish a level of trust with you that you don't have to ask if there's an NDA. I just know he's not going to tell people, right? Although I think we may have had an NDA. Anyway, so that was a very long response to your statement about why coaching and which side of the spectrum you entered into. But I really think it's important that most people who enter coaching realize it's better to approach it from a way that you were positively coached as opposed to just not to be the person who did you wrong.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate the openness in that too, Cody. And like what comes to mind for me right now is like I know you, I know you're successful, you're crushing it. And I think sometimes, I think the stigma is changing, but sometimes there's still this kind of thing out there that if you have an exec coach or you have a coach, well, you need help because there's some deficiency. And to me, like it couldn't be further from the truth. Like I was speaking at an event last week, a networking event, and I was sitting with the founder. It was like a fireside chat. And she was talking about imposter syndrome earlier in her career when she was first getting investing. And I kind of went off the cuff and I paused the chat for a second. I asked the 100 people in the room, raise your hand if you've ever felt either not good enough or that you didn't belong in the room or imposter syndrome or a ton of pressure or stuck or that you have a ceiling or any of these like very common inner barriers. And it took a second and a half where I was like, is anyone going to raise their hand? And within 3 seconds, I'd say 85 out of 100 people. Oh yeah, around the room. And I looked back at her and I was like, this is to me the whole thing where sometimes we have to project ourselves as like, oh, everything's great. And like, I'm an executive, I'm a founder, everything has to be on. And I find that the founders that I work with, I mean, there's under so much pressure, Cody, and you know this, to be on all the time for their investors or their employees or their teams or their board of directors. Like there's no space for them to actually sit and work through those inner things that might be keeping them from that next level. And that's really the need that I'm trying to serve here, and I find it so interesting that and that stigma is evaporating, right? Like I was talking to some friends over the weekend. They were saying that they're hearing more people brag now that they have a coach, right? Whereas 5-10 years ago, it might have been something like you might keep it secretive or it might be a sign that you need help. But I'm glad that tide is changing. I'm so appreciative of your openness. I just did a few videos on LinkedIn about my own experiences with my coach and like the top 3 things that I, went through 4 or 5 years ago with her. So yeah. As you can see, I'm a pretty open guy. So if you don't stop me, I won't stop talking. But yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, keep talking. I think that the honesty about having a coach, I mean, look, you're a golfer. Tiger Woods would never say, I don't have a coach. He would never be embarrassed to say he had a coach. As the number one golfer in the world at the time, Phil Mickelson as the number one golfer, a whole host of coaches or of golfers would never say, no, I'm too good for a coach. I don't need a coach, right? I've got it all together. My daughter, when she was a younger vocalist, I said, why don't we get you a coach? She goes, well, do you not think I'm good?
Yeah.
Right. And so the stigma is you're not good, so you need a coach. When the complete opposite is true. You are good, and you're so good that you need a coach to tell you the areas of improvement that are needed, right? Because you can be great. You can be even greater than you are if you are great.
Yeah.
So I don't know why there was even that stigma. I think the same thing about mental health providers, right?
Yeah.
10 years ago when I started down the journey I did in healthcare, a man of my stature and my age would have never admitted that he had a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you, every man I've ever met needed a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
right? And those of us who were brave enough to say, I've got one, open the door for everybody else to say, oh, he's got one. I thought he had it all together. Well, I do because I have a therapist, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And, like, there's also going to be periods in our life where we feel like we might need that help more than other periods of our life. And I think the feeling that I'm trying to provide is that you have someone in your corner, right? How do we take years of growth or months of growth and shrink that into days and weeks? Like I even think of it as this like super empowering thing where, look, there's a really good chance that 85% of your peers are dealing with those types of pressures or thinking about, hey, I've got a person right now. He's like, hey, I'm running a business that's worth X, and we think we're going to double it in the next couple of years. But how do we blueprint, what a CEO should be doing in that type of environment? Like, how do we do that, right? And that's not even something where it's a struggle. It's just how do we accelerate growth to that point? And I think a lot of these things sometimes, Cody, like, they don't really get solved with just time.
No.
When you're dealing with inner barriers or fears or limiting beliefs or pressures or these narratives that we tell ourselves that sound so logical, but they're really baked in emotion, sitting and waiting and hoping that it goes away often doesn't work. And I know that because A, I've lived it, but B, I mean, if I had a Venn diagram of the types of things that I hear from university students and MBA students and 10-year career people and 20-year and 30-year and all incomes and all demographics, 70% of it's the same.
Mhm.
I've had the 8-figure person say that they don't feel that they're good enough. I've had the college student say that he doesn't feel like he's good enough. And if we don't actually figure out the root of where in the code in your software that's coming from and how do we kind of pinpoint it and rewire that slowly, time itself, external achievements isn't gonna make that go away. And so in my mind, I'm like, yo, like, let's just run at it. Let's just find that thing that you think that 1 or 2 roots that's keeping you from that next level.
Mhm.
And instead of hiding from it, what if we attacked it for 3 months and you actually came out feeling better than you ever have before?
Yeah.
Like, what could that be worth, right? And
Yeah.
that's what I can't hide the smile. Like, that's what just gets me so fired up, even on 4 hours of sleep today.
Nice. Yeah, that same therapist and then Brandon reiterated it. You hear that voice that tells you you're not good enough or you don't belong here. That therapist said, do you ever talk back to that voice?
Mm.
Like, tell him to go to hell. You know better, right? And a couple of years ago, I did a talk called Knowing Your Worth. And the data I had for that talk was amazing. More than 80% of professionals have confessed that at one time or another, they suffer from imposter syndrome. They suffer from, I don't deserve to be in this room, right? You do. And the trick is to find a coach like you, Tarik, who will work with you to compile that record of success in your head that the minute that voice speaks up, you say, oh, we got this. Thank you. We got it.
And the amazing thing, Cody, is I find that, like, so if we treat that like that you got this feeling as the answer, the route to getting to that feeling might be different for you and me and whoever's watching this and the other people that we've spoken to, because you gave the example of like, hey, what if we list out the wins, right? The logic. Let's throw logic at that voice and say, hey, you know what? Next time I feel like I'm not feeling good enough, here's the 10 kind of examples of evidence why I am good enough. When I felt a few years ago that I was under a lot of pressure, and I felt that, I made a video about this, about feeling under pressure and feeling like, oh, it's always about the next thing. Like nothing's ever enough.
Right.
Throwing logic at it wasn't helping me. It actually wasn't the thing for me. And what I landed at with my coach, because we went in and looked at those 5 beliefs behind that pressure. I can visualize I was sitting in that chair at a 2:00 session. I've got the notes from that session, and we figured out what those 5 beliefs were, and we figured out what was underneath it. And it was like 2 things. And in that hour, I changed my definition of good enough. It had nothing to do with LinkedIn followers or stats or comparison. It became about one thing, which was, if I'm clear on my values and what I care about and who I want to be and the type of person I want to be and what I want other people to feel, and whether that's honesty, integrity, openness, if I can live my life in those ways, I can go to bed at night, Cody. I don't care what the revenue is. I don't care what the success is. If I can do those things, I can go to bed at night. And for the past few years, like if I'm ever feeling like I don't belong in the room, I'm actually not even throwing logic at it. I'm throwing those values on a Post-it note at it, and that calms me down. And then there's like 15 other permutations that could work for someone else based on how their brain is wired, right? And I think that's such the coolest thing for me about this whole process of exec coaching is I'm going on. Sorry. Should I keep going? I think the cool thing is I think we are taught that if you are stuck in any way, ask ChatGPT, call up a friend, Google it, read another book. Maybe the 15th book will have the answer. And I think the thing about that is, yes, external guidance and mentors are good to an extent, but what those things won't do, there's no perfect ChatGPT prompt that's going to actually go in and get to the root of like what is driving that belief, because we kind of need to go up and find the source of that code, understand it, be in this environment to really throw objectivity at it and take the emotion out and then start to rewire from there. And when I say time won't take care of that, the perfect article isn't going to take care of that, right? Like the 10 tips on how to feel better when you're feeling stuck isn't going to get you there, right? So I find it so fascinating that I could sit with 10 different founders that say they have the exact same thing, and we have 10 different routes and then 10 different solutions. And I think that's why I don't get bored doing this. Okay, I'm going to pause now. Sorry.
That's great. So what I'm hearing is your approach to your coaching clients is customized for each one.
For sure.
So yeah. Tell me about that process, how you engage with your clients. What does the first few meetings look like? And then how do you approach customizing each experience for each client that you're coaching? Because I've seen coaches that come at it, they bring you a book and you've got fill in the blank questions. And then, at the end of it, they give you this cookie cutter response. And it's back to that 15 books that you can read. It's another thing that goes on the shelf.
Yeah.
So what's your approach?
So before I even start working with someone, we'll get on an intro call, and my goal on an intro call, there's actually nothing for sale on that call. Like if you begged me to take the credit card, I wouldn't swipe it, right? We are just connecting so that I can understand where are you at currently mentally with everything going on. What does utopia look like? If you were to call me in 3 months and you're calling me because everything in this area of your life is exactly as you wish it could be, draw that picture for me. Like, what is the perfect case scenario? And then let's look at the gap between that. I want to understand, like, what's the area we're dealing with? Is it a pressure? Is it a fear? Is it something about getting a promotion? Is it something about imposter syndrome? Whatever that is. Okay. And by the end of that call, and once we start working together, I want to define basically what that end point is. And so we've got kind of like a mutual contract of like, this is the lights that we are trying to walk towards. There's no prescribed, hey, week 1 is going to be about this, week 2 is going to be about that. Every time we meet, we're coming in. If I was coaching you, Cody, you'd open up and say, okay, Tarik, like this is where I'm at today. And within this framework of, say it was us trying to figure out, Cody, when you double your business, what does your role look like? Okay, well, let's look at kind of where you're at right now. Let's look at what is it specifically about that question of 2 years from now, what's my role going to be? What is specifically underneath that fear, right? And my approach, Cody, is like in that session, we're going to try to draw out what that fear is. We're going to try to draw out what's underneath it. And then we're going to chip away at the couple different roots. Now, we might solve all of that in 1 hour. right? But very likely what's going to happen is we'll go down a path, we'll figure out a route, we'll see what's behind it, we'll start rewiring it, and we'll make sure that we end that session with some action items that is all tied to everything that we talked about. Now you go off for a week, maybe you're reflecting on something, maybe you are researching something, and you'll come back the next week. We'll say, okay, where are you at? And we'll pick up right over there, right? So it's this very iterative process week over week. I have people that within a week and a half, Cody, they're like, oh my God, I figured it out. Oh, I found it. The really introspective, really driven, they're in tune with their mind and their body, they'll get to it really quickly. There's other people where we go down a path and come back up. It's actually something else that comes up 2-3 weeks later. That's the actual route. And it's very, very customized, right? There's structure, but we are in it, finding the route, chipping away week over week at what's actually going on.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic.
It's not as prescriptive, which means in a way, like I'm going in fully open-minded because I have no idea what's going to come out.
Right.
And my job is like, how can I digest what you're saying, help you pick up on the thought patterns, help call you out on your blind spots, help call you out when you say something that feels like a truth, but it's actually an assumption, right? I've had someone tell me, hey, Tarik, I actually have a belief that careers are supposed to suck. And we figured that out like a month and a half in.
Right.
And it explained everything, right? So my job is to listen, pick up on your patterns, and work with you so that we can figure out what's actually going on. And the faster we can do that, the quicker I can get you out, the better, right? This isn't like, hey, how do I keep Cody for a year and a half? It's like, no, let's get in, get out in like 2-3 months and get you on your way type of thing.
So what is an average engagement length for you? Is it 2 or 3 months, or is it
about 3 months?
Okay.
About 3 months, right? And it's usually weekly or bi-weekly meetings, and we're in it. The hours fly by, but we're in it. We're very focused on specifically what is that end goal after 3 months? Where do we want to get to at the end of the hour? How does that in service to the bigger goal? And then we are in it, analyzing it, dissecting it, super empowering. But like the vibe is like you and I talking right now, right? It's not this like super formal buttoned up thing. It's like, no, like let's chat. There's open trust here. We are with each other and we're vibing back and forth, but I'm doing like 20% of the talking max. Like I am asking questions, I'm probing, I'm digging, I'm picking up on thought patterns. And that's what I need to do with different personalities and different people with different experiences. And it keeps me excited, honestly.
That's great. And that tells me a lot about you as a coach, that it's not 6-month commitment, right? You don't have to sign up and be auto debited for the next 18 months and try to think of what to say when you have a conversation. It really is impressive that you are that focused on getting a resolution, that your goal is a resolution, not a long-term client.
100%. If I can get you out in 3 months and you're like, I had someone tell this, I actually said this on a podcast a few weeks ago. He called me and we had worked for about 4 months, and he said, Tarik, I don't think I am going to renew because I've never felt this good in the past 3 years. And he was feeling bad. And I was sitting in this chair and I started laughing, and I'm like, why are you feeling bad? He's like, well, it means that you don't get as much commitment from me. I'm like, dude, this is why we're here.
Yeah.
We're here to get to this point. Like, this is the best case scenario, right? There is nothing, man. I woke up to a post this morning, this guy in Denmark, and we did one session, and he writes a post about the session. I didn't know it was coming. And I woke up and it was 7:30. I was on 4 hours of sleep and I could barely read it with my glasses on. And that feeling, like seeing the impact in individuals, seeing like the week over week Cody, like the shoulders start to drop a bit, the face starts to feel a bit more relaxed, the tone starts to get a bit more steady. I can see their confidence building week over week just in their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't record my sessions, but I always make the joke like, man, I wish I'd recorded the session so you could see what you looked like 4 or 5 weeks ago. Like, there's nothing in the world more rewarding to me than seeing that as a feedback loop.
That's awesome.
I feel like I took us way off track. We have 5 minutes left and I can't believe it. I hope I stayed on track here.
We don't have a track. We are. I know how you love status quo, and so we don't have status quo here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like to let the conversation go where it may, but I know you probably have a couple of things you do want to touch on. Is there anything on your list that we haven't covered?
No, look, honestly, I think it was really I was thinking about our conversation and I wanted to talk about, how the coaching works. I put out this offer a month and a half ago. I was like, "Hey, the world is in chaos right now. I have a bit of time. If you want a free coaching session, here you go." And I've never had a LinkedIn post get that much traction before. And then I actually had the free sessions with people and I realized, I think a lot of people in those sessions, it was their first time ever doing it,
Mm.
and they hear coaching and they might hear kind of the example you had from a few years ago where it was maybe not the safest environment, maybe it was more directive, it wasn't as open, whatever that was. And I realized like, oh, you know what, I still think there's some education to do here on what this really is. So I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to touch on the fact that these things don't really get solved by default with time. I think that's super important. And this is all about empowering leaders that are doing a great job and helping turn months into weeks, right? This isn't about, there's no deficiencies. We're not assuming that there's something wrong with you. There's no diagnosis. We're not trying to go back in the past and figure out, hey, why are you feeling this way? It's like, no, okay, here's where you're at. There's a great chance everyone you look up to is dealing with the same thing or has dealt with it. What is unique about your situation and how you're thinking about this? And what is the most direct path we can take to get you to that level that you described to me on our intake call as utopia? Because that, I'm not going to swear, that freaking phone call is happening in 3 months. Like, you are going to call me in 3 months and we're going to get there. How do we get there? Right. That is the energy we're bringing. And I'm fired up. That's what I wanted to say today.
That's really cool. We talked earlier about books and all the books you can read, but I'm always curious, what are you reading?
For the 5th time, I'm reading a book called Inner Excellence by Jim Murphy. Do you watch football at all?
Occasionally.
Did you see the thing with the Philadelphia Eagles player that was reading a book during the playoffs on the bench? It's
Yeah.
that book.
Is it that
I
book?
I first picked that up in 2017, and I read it every 2 years since. And every time I read it, I got something different out of it. But it is my favorite book on like our inner journey, focusing on the process and not the result. Calls out some of like the things in our society of like how much we love status and money and achievements. And there's this amazing quote, Cody, from that book. It's a football player that was basically saying, I think he was a Hall of Famer. He was like, I kept thinking that the next rung on the ladder, the next win, the next relationship, the next Super Bowl, making the Pro Bowl, I kept thinking that would get me to that fulfillment. And he's like, it's like you get to the top of the building and you realize the ladder was on the wrong building the whole time. And that blew my mind. So I'm reading it again before bed every couple nights, a few pages here and there, 5th time.
That is really cool. You know what they say about mountaintop experiences?
Hmm.
Once you get to the top of the mountain, you realize there are other mountains to climb. And so you can't make that experience your goal.
Yeah. That resonates deeply. And LinkedIn's changing these days. I'm seeing a lot more people being open about this, calling it out.
Yeah.
A year ago, to me, LinkedIn was very, at least my feed was very, hey, congratulate me on this promotion, congratulate me on this move. And now I'm seeing a lot more real stuff on there, and it's a great community. And I'm glad that's the conversation we're having right now. I think it's going to help a lot of people,
Absolutely.
hopefully, out there.
All right, my friend, tell me where we can find you.
You can find me. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. Send me a DM. I'm always happy to chat. Like I said, if we get on the phone, you give me your credit card, I'm not going to swipe it. Like, we chat as humans. I talk to people all the time. Nothing to be afraid of. I'm just a guy here to try to help. And you can ping me on LinkedIn anytime. Tarik, Ali, and Cody. This was so much fun.
This was fun. Tell me, do you have any parting thoughts for us?
No, just, if I don't know, you're not alone. If you're feeling stuck and you're feeling like you're in the grind and you're feeling like there's something in you that's stopping you, even if you're not gonna, tackle it right now, or, it's okay enough, just know that you're not alone. I get to sit here in this chair and see amazing, amazing people deal with these things. And now I'm used to seeing it, but I have the privilege of seeing how universal these feelings are. So many people before you have felt it and gotten through it, and you can too. And I'm convinced of that.
Awesome. Tarik, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Cody. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Why don't you hang out in the waiting room for just a second?
All right. Okay? Cheers.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's Speakers Collaborative studio session. If you would like to learn more about the Speakers Collaborative, visit us at thespeakerscollaborative.com or on LinkedIn and Facebook at the Speakers Collaborative. Have a great week, everybody. Until next time.